Welcome to CineMyles, the show for cinephiles. My name is Miles Hughes. I'm joined here today by Mr. Alec Hadden.
Hi.
An esteemed local actor who just won a seasonal award from Theatre Jacksonville for his role as Chef Louis in The Little Mermaid.
Ah, oui, oui, monsieur.
We are here today to talk about Rogue One, a Star Wars story. A new trailer dropped pretty recently. You actually have some first-hand Star Wars experience in your acting career.
I do. The Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra, I was hired to narrate their Star Wars in concert, where I played an Obi-Wan Kenobi-esque Jedi and narrated the entire Star Wars story going, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, all that kind of stuff. So,
let's start. It was several years ago. Disney bought Star Wars.
Yes.
Disney bought Lucasfilm.
Lucasfilm, yes. I had mixed emotions, I think, as a lot of major Star Wars fans had, where you know that Disney always does a good product. Mm-hmm. Well, 90% of the time. But, you know, how is it, you know, this is Star Wars. This is not your average entertainment property. If you look at the success of Force Awakens, and you see how really, I think what Disney has done with it is not only take it where they're going to make billions and billions off of it, but they're trying to make decisions that they know that the fans appreciate.
Well, that's the big thing that sticks out to me, is that they are incredibly respectful of the enormity of the pop culture impact that
Yes.
Star Wars has. They are very aware of how much it means to people. I think back to that Comic-Con first look at Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
There was very much how, like, everyone on set is a huge Star Wars fan. We love Star Wars so much. We just want to do right by this amazing property. Mm-hmm. And that's been reflected in sort of all their marketing stuff for both Force Awakens and Rogue One.
And for Rogue One, particularly, and a lot of it is with J.J. Abrams, who did Force Awakens. Gareth Edwards is doing Rogue One. Both of them have said, you know, look, we grew up on Star Wars. We are of the generation that Star Wars was ours. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we have such love for it. It's why we joined this world of filmmaking that we want to do justice by it. And I think Disney has been very smart in finding those people to lead these movies.
Well, and that's the most interesting part about this whole new sort of generation of films, is that these are the films being made by the people who grew up watching Star Wars. It's no longer by George Lucas. It is by the people who Star Wars was for, now creating new Star Wars for a new generation.
Exactly.
To get it all up. I think it's fair to say we were both very big fans of Force Awakens.
I would say so. We both of you and I and some other people whom you have had on this channel previously all were very positive about it. And I will be very direct here. I'm actually someone who enjoys the prequel films. I know you are not, but and I will clarify what I mean by this. I don't think the prequels are in any way near as good as the original films, but I can enjoy them for what they are. Having said that, though, I think what Force Awakens did was it took a lot of the fears that people had, and it took a lot of the negative things about the prequels that people didn't like, including some of the things that I didn't like about the prequels, and made sure not to make those mistakes again.
Yes, it wasn't a repeat of sort of the things that didn't work about the prequels. They were very... My favorite aspect, one of my favorite aspects, is that they really bring it back to the very grounded and gritty feel. It's not just about filming on location, using practical aliens, practical effects. Right. But there's a whole... The world has a lived-in quality that was missing from the prequels. They're too squeaky clean.
It was too shiny, too... And, you know, and obviously a big complaint about the prequels was the fact that pretty much everything from episode 2 on was just CG backgrounds.
Yeah, like actors standing in front of green screen, and it just looks bad.
And you can really tell that with Force Awakens, there's so little that where you can barely tell when it happens.
Rogue One, it seems very much the same
mantra. Very much. My favorite thing that I've seen so far in the behind-the-scenes stuff is the fact that they've talked about how they've turned this one kind of corridor in the Death Star. They actually used a London subway station for. And what they did was they just went in. It's one of the newer ones. I believe it's near Waterloo. And what they did was they just went in one night, completely changed all the signage to make it look like the Death Star, They filmed that particular scene in that one night, got rid of everything, and the subway system was back up and running in the morning.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, I think one of my favorite lines in the behind the scenes is where he says, this is a film that comes right up to, that ends with the beginning of my favorite film of all time.
Right.
Like he's clearly, because I have my reservations about Gareth Edwards.
And understandable.
I've said this before, I did not care for the new Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
I like the scenes where Godzilla's in it, but I kind of hate the rest of it. I found it pretty boring. And that may be more of a script and story issue than a directorial issue. Certainly he's good at creating a sense of atmosphere and a sense of scale.
I agree.
Well, that's what's interesting comparing his first film, Monsters, to Godzilla, is Monsters works because of the character moments, because of the acting, and because of the chemistry between the leads. But it kind of falls flat when the actual monsters show up. Yeah. And in Godzilla, all the human stuff falls completely flat, and none of the characters are interesting, but the monster stuff is great.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting with Rogue One, where he's clearly got a decent amount of sort of power, and he's clearly got a huge budget and a huge property that he cares a lot about, what that balance will be like. He's got an incredibly good cast.
So I think the big one for me is Forrest Whitaker. Now, because I would argue that he's probably the most famous actor in the film.
That's fair.
They'll at least say, oh, it's that guy from Last King of Scotland, or stuff like that.
Or Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai.
Yeah. Yes.
That was for you, single Ghost Dog fan.
Yes.
You're welcome.
You know who you are. But what I find interesting about his character, I don't know how much you know about his character.
Yeah, he's a character from, is it Clone Wars?
Clone Wars.
Okay.
So his character's name is Saw Gerrera. And that character originated in the Clone Wars cartoon show that was on Cartoon Network a few years ago. And in that show, that character was a kind of the leader of a group of rebel guerrilla fighters who were trying to take back their planet from basically a king that had been put there by the evil separatist army and all that kind of stuff. And what was interesting about his character, if you watch the show, I highly suggest you do. It's on Netflix, the entire show. It's a fantastic show. But his character was the very kind of headstrong, I'm the leader of the rebels, when really he wasn't a good leader. Okay. And so it's going to be interesting to watch in the movie now.
Well, they've got to assume going into the movie that most people won't have seen
exactly.
It. So you got to introduce.
So there's going to have to be some exposition about that.
Well, it's interesting comparing. You see him in both trailers, and in the first trailer, you can clearly see he's walking with a limp. And he's got this raspy voice. He's clearly seen some stuff. Yeah. But in the second trailer, he's got his hair and his facial hair are longer, and they're graying. He almost looks like Colonel West.
A little bit.
I also detected in the second trailer, and this might just be my speculation, but almost like a surrogate father thing with Felicity Jones.
So one of the basically almost all but confirmed rumors is Mads Mikkelsen is playing Felicity Jones's father.
Well, they just released today actually an international trailer, which is basically the same footage, but it does have a line about, we intercepted the plans for the Death Star from your father. Yeah. And we haven't seen him in the trailers yet. But
we haven't seen him in the trailer, but there was an interview that he did 2 or 3 months ago where he accidentally let it slip that he's Felicity Jones's father. Yeah. Ben Mendelsohn.
Okay, I absolutely love Ben Mendelsohn. If you haven't seen his work, he was the lead in Animal Kingdom. He had a very small role in Dark Knight Rises. He was in The Place Beyond the Pines. He's done a lot of really great work. He does accents better than any actor I can think of these days.
When you need a good character actor who can be that kind of menacing, but intellectually menacing character, Ben Mendelsohn's great for that.
Yeah, when he's playing what I believe is the main villain.
Yeah, so he's the main villain. It's Director Krillix, I believe this is the character's name. What will be very interesting for me to see is we've already gotten the confirmation that Darth Vader is in the movie.
Yay! Let's talk about that for a second. Are you excited that Darth Vader's in this movie?
Here's my thing. I'm happy that they've got James Earl Jones back.
That's, for me, the big reason why it works. Because you still got James Earl Jones, and it doesn't matter as much who's in the suit. Sorry, David Prowse, but it doesn't.
What has been discussed is that his use in the film is going to be small, but impactful. There's going to be kind of one big scene for Vader. Mm-hmm. And what they're going to use him for is it's going to be a very brutal scene. You're going to see Vader. He could wipe out an entire planet by himself if he wanted to.
Right.
with just a lightsaber and the Force. It's going to be that level of, we're going to see mass destruction at his hands.
I hope they don't overdo that, though, because anything that extreme does beg the question, why didn't he do anything crazy like that in the originals?
Exactly.
Obviously, budget constraints, but
Right.
like, the prequels had this problem where they would introduce like too much good technology.
Yeah.
You're like, where was all this technology in the originals?
Right.
You don't want to overdo stuff that happened previously.
And I agree with that.
The other big rumors that we should probably address, and something that's a bit more relevant now in the wake of Suicide Squad, is all this talk of the reshoots. Now, we should preface, any big movie that comes out, whether it's a comic book movie, sci-fi, any blockbuster, any tentpole, you're going to have reshoots. It always happens. They always do the reshoots because you don't know what you have until you got it in the editing room.
They're always scheduled before production even starts.
Yeah, the actors already have them in their itinerary. It's always very clearly like, we know we're going to need extra time to get, and sometimes it's little pickup things to flesh a scene out.
Right.
Sometimes it's little character building moments. Sometimes it's
maybe
new
they
action scene.
or maybe they just even need a new angle for a particular scene.
The reason it's relevant now, as Suicide Squad just demonstrated, is that that film was clearly given reshoots to change the tone, and it clearly was given new scenes to make it funnier, so that it could reflect the trailer that people liked, and not necessarily the dark and gritty film that David Ayer delivered.
Right.
And so the scuttlebutt, which should be taken with a grain of salt, is that something similar has happened with Rogue One.
Yeah.
And that Gareth Edwards' war film doesn't quite fit with the tone they've set in Force Awakens.
So
Now they've been obviously downplaying these rumors. There's even talk that a different director like Tony Gilroy has come in and actually directed the reshoots, and that Gareth Edwards' role has been minimalized. I really hope that's not true.
And I don't think that is the case.
I do know it had a lot of trouble in the script process. They brought in like 5 different writers at one point to fine-tune it, which isn't always disaster. I mean, if you think of something like World War Z, that was a film that had like the most chaotic production ever.
Right.
But like all the different, like they brought in Drew Goddard and all these people, but it ultimately helped touch up the movie and make it something watchable.
Make it better than it could have been, which it could have been a disaster.
It looked like a disaster, but they pulled it together. So you never know.
The main rumor that I heard was that the Disney board saw a rough cut of the film and hated it because they thought it was going to be too intense and told Gareth Edwards to reshoot it to make it more family friendly. I don't think that is necessarily what's happened.
I think there will be a fingerprint of meddling if there was any. If it all flies smooth, then we won't even know the difference.
Exactly.
And the reshoots will be a forgotten rumor.
Yeah. There is one other character that I wanted to talk about, and that is this Imperial assassin droid that's being played by Alan Tudyk.
Yes, motion capture.
Yes.
All that work on iRobot finally paid off.
Yeah, finally. Something good happened with that movie. What's going to be interesting about his character is, from everything that we've seen, he's very bland, very dry.
Yes.
I think Alan Tudyk, that kind of humor worked really well for him. So I'll be interested to see how he relates with Felicity Jones and the other major characters.
I'm really excited to see more from Ben Mendelsohn's character. Something that really struck out to me was how he's got this all-white uniform. He seems like possibly a very squeaky clean guy, but there's the one shot where he's like walking through the water and he's like dragging his cape in the mud, and it's like he's the guy who's like willing to go down on the ground and get his hands dirty. I'm really excited to see sort of the group. They're clearly building up a very diverse ensemble, which I definitely appreciate. 2 Star Wars movies in a row with a female lead. Admittedly, it's 2 very white female leads who look identical to one another. I'll tell you the one scene that made me go the most, like goosebumps when I was watching the trailer, is there's a bit where Felicity Jones is like on this catwalk and she's walking, and then like a TIE fighter just sort of rises up, and it looks so. That's the kind of stuff, that and the shot where they're running on the ground and the AT-AT is shooting at them. Those are the kind of moments that really highlight what Gareth Edwards does best in terms of scale and in terms of like, I think it's going to be a very, rather than like lots of space battles or epic stuff, it's going to be a lot of like gritty troops on the ground kind of action with like these big massive machines, and like just normal little dudes have to go fight them. I always think of the Star Wars Battlefront game, where it's very much about like the grunt sort of being on the ground tackling these impossible odds.
Right, I agree with you. I think a lot of the battles are going to be very visceral.
Yes.
And I think they're going to be very much focused on not the grand assault like you have in the prequels, where you have millions of troops against millions of troops. It's going to be very much about small
like
small skirmishes.
So overall, I think we can both say that we're very excited about this movie. For me, now that Suicide Squad is no more, probably my most anticipated film of the rest of the year.
I would agree with that. For me, so this is kind of in the big film of the year.
It's the big event film of the year.
The big event film of the year. I mean, there's obviously going to be a lot of smaller pictures, which are probably going to be better films. And the one thing that I am concerned about is that it may not match the expectations that people have with Force Awakens, where because people were ready to have Force Awakens not be a great film and then be pleasantly surprised when it was good, I think there's going to be a lot of people who now might be over expecting this film to be fantastic and then might get disappointed if it's not good.
Yes, but I think the big thing they have going for them, and the reason I think these standalone movies are actually a really good idea, is because it doesn't have quite the same hype that like Episode 8 is going to have.
Right.
Lots of expectations. That one almost needs to be the new Empire Strikes Back.
I mean, there are just going to be so many people just wanting Mark Hamill to say something.
Yeah, that would be a start.
Yeah.
But with this one, the stakes are less high.
Yeah.
And so it is free to just be its own movie. And it's the same with the new Han Solo movie.
Yeah. Which
I gotta say, Alden Ehrenreich for me is the perfect casting choice.
I'm happy with Ehrenreich.
He looks it just enough, and we've seen from Hail Caesar that he's a great actor.
The important thing for me is the script for that film has been written by Lawrence Kasdan.
Yes. And it's being directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
And who I like most of the stuff that they do. I mean,
well, they have a very subversive angle.
It's a very subversive, but you can tell that it's subversive with a lot of respect.
With a lot of love and respect, exactly. Like Jump Street and the Lego Movie.
Yeah.
Very, like, they have a sense of fun. Have fun with movies, guys!
Yes, not everything has to be serious and politics.
Yeah, keep the politics, leave the politics at the door.
Right.
Pretty please.
Yes.
So yeah, Rogue One, we're excited. You should be excited.
Yes.
But don't be too excited, because if it's bad, it's not our fault.
Right.
We got you all hyped up. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm glad to have been a part of this and hope to do more.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching. CineMyles. Like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. You know, where the buttons are.
Yep.
And stay tuned for more. Peace.